Chapter 1041. The physical body that Gu Xingyin reconstructed was simply heaven-defying. In addition, she had already confirmed her relationship with Gu Yensui. In the remaining days, she wholeheartedly focused on increasing her strength. When she was in the soul formation stage, she established a sect on a mountain peak that was rich in spiritual energy not far from the empty mountain, Purple Clouds Dao sect. In the beginning, no one knew about this unknown sect. But her sect's name was grand. What was even rarer was that Gu Yensui commanded the entire demon race to publicize the Purple Clouds Dao sect to the entire cultivation world. In an instant, the Purple Clouds Dao sect became famous. With fame there was naturally trouble. But those who came to find trouble openly and secretly were all slapped down the mountain by Gu Yensui. Thus, there were rumors that the Purple Clouds Dao sect was built by the Demon King for his wife. Gu Yensui himself called it, for fun. No one had heard of the sect master called Jinghong Fairy. Even within the demon race, there were many people who had opinions about this. Those demon race had long heard that the Demon King had a lover who was like a treasure. None of them had seen Gu Xingyin's strength, but many had seen Gu Xingyin's face. In this way, Gu Xingyin's reputation as a femme fatale spread more and more. The person in question did not have any reaction to this. She even stopped Gu Yensui. Their mouths are on those people's bodies. You can control their mouths, but can you control their hearts? Gu Xingyin smiled and comforted the indignant disciples. Her face was calm. In this cultivation world, there is always only one way to make people shut up. While everyone was looking at this so-called Purple Clouds Dao sect, as if they were watching a joke, Gu Xingyin welcomed the lightning tribulation for her advancement. The entire cultivation world was shaken by the powerful lightning tribulation. After asking around what was this, the legendary Purple Clouds sect master, who only had a fairy-like appearance? 1 strike, 2 strikes, 18 strikes, 49 strikes, 56 strikes. The more they counted, the more shocked they became. In order to advance to the divine transformation realm, one had to face 49 lightning tribulations. Advancing to the body integration stage required a total of 64 lightning tribulations. In order to advance from the form synthesis stage to the legendary crossing tribulation stage, one had to go through 81 lightning strikes. Looking at the number of tribulation lightning bolts, there were already more than 49 of them. Could it be that this man was progressing to the body integration stage? In the past 5,000 years, only one cultivator had successfully broken through the soul formation stage and reached the body integration stage. That person was the current ruler of the demon clan, Gu Yensui, who possessed the bloodline of the red fire Qilin. His strength was also the main reason why he was able to control the demon clan in such a short time. And now, was there going to be a second one? Those who had previously looked down on the Purple Clouds Dao sect's sect master felt an indescribable pain in their faces. The other party had already come this far. Regardless of whether they succeeded this time or not, they were already ahead of them. And those youths who were hesitant because of the recent rumors also stepped on the road to the Purple Clouds Dao sect. Gu Yensui was the only one who had no doubts about his master's ability to survive the lightning tribulation. She was originally a crossing tribulation stage powerhouse. Even if her spiritual power was only at the body integration stage, her strength was not comparable to ordinary body integration stage powerhouses. In the rolling black tribulation clouds that no one saw, Gu Xingyin's hair fluttered in the wind. She faced the aggressive tribulation lightning calmly without any sadness or joy. Today's 8th chapter. There should be one more chapter to finish in this world. In the next world, Gao Lingji was still wandering between the vampire siblings and the iceberg school hunk. There won't be any more chapters in the morning. Sorry everyone, don't stay up late to wait. I came back late today and didn't have the energy to write, so I only wrote these 2 chapters in the evening. Finally, although there were no updates in the morning, I still had to ask for tickets. Chapter 1042. Not only was the sect leader of the Purple Clouds Dao sect the Taoist companion of the Taoist emperor, she was also a combined body fusion stage cultivator. In the cultivation world, it was not without reason that power decided everything. With their own power and the Taoist emperor Gu Yensui's unconditional support, The Purple Clouds Dao sect was developing at a terrifying speed. The cultivation world situation of being monopolized for thousands of years was broken. Those large sects wanted to stop it, because the rise of the Purple Clouds Dao sect had harmed their interests. But they did not have the power to stop it. Another 500 years later, the Purple Clouds Dao sect, which had become one of the top sects in the cultivation world, once again welcomed the lightning tribulation. 81 Lightning Tribulations. The only tribulation stage cultivator in the cultivation world in 10,000 years. Because of this, the Jinghong Fairy's name became famous, and the Purple Clouds Dao sect became the only cultivation holy land in the cultivation world's eyes. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the mission. The system notification rang out. Gu Xingyin smiled. She took in a few nominal disciples, and taught them the cultivation techniques that had long been buried in the river of time 10,000 years ago. The Purple Clouds Dao sect's foundation made countless sects speechless, and at the same time jealous. After successfully grooming the next generation of successors, Gu Xingyin retreated behind the scenes and became the Purple Clouds Dao sect's pillar. With such a tribulation stage cultivator, no one could shake the Purple Clouds Dao sect's position. And everyone knew that there were only two places to meet the Jinghong Fairy. The Purple Clouds Peak, which was covered in snow all year round, and the Taoist sacred ground, Empty Mountain. In fact, the frequency of her appearing in the latter was even higher. Everyone knew that the Jinghong Fairy and the Taoist Emperor were a pair of Taoist companions, and the two of them were inseparable. It was even said that when the Taoist Emperor was 3,000 years old, the Jinghong Fairy used her own blood essence to create a heart-connecting talisman for him. With this talisman, even if the two of them were in different places, they would still be able to communicate telepathically. She could even forcefully transfer the damage to herself when her Tao partner was fatally injured. In the past, everyone envied sect master Zishao for his good looks. He had caught the eye of the demon emperor, and from then on, he had a meteoric rise. But now, the target of envy was the demon emperor. What did he do to make the Jinghong Fairy, who was the best in the cultivation world in both appearance and strength, so loyal to him? However, some things would always happen between the two of them. The others were just making wild guesses while chatting. Gu Xingyin spent 10,000 years in this world with her little disciple, until the blue sea turned into mulberry fields, and a new cycle of reincarnation descended. The two of them held hands, closed their eyes together, and stepped into a new cycle. This was an exceptionally luxurious room. The huge crystal chandelier overhead took up almost half of the entire ceiling, and the furnishings in the room were all the latest limited edition models from major international luxury brands. The entire room was pink in color. Whether it was the princess doll that was as tall as a person in the corner, or the wardrobe that was full of girly dresses, it was clear that the owner of this room was a little princess who was doted on by everyone. Now this little princess was lying on a big bed that was big enough for her to do a few somersaults on. She had mesmerizing big black eyes, long eyelashes that were like neat and fine brushes, a delicate little nose, and a pair of lips that were as beautiful as cherry blossoms. When she smiled, two cute little canine teeth would be revealed, and she looked quite harmless. However, that was just how it looked. Chapter 1043. Gu Xingyin knew that when this cherry blossom-like mouth opened, those two cute and harmless canine teeth would pierce deeply into one's flesh and suck out one's blood. The dark red tongue licked the corner of your blood-stained lips. It was a charm and danger that humans couldn't resist. This girl with an angelic face was called Wei Xingyin Luo. During the day, she was a student of St. Rhodia High School. At night, she was a pure-blooded princess of the Weixing family, a vampire who walked in the darkness and fed on human blood. Now Gu Xingyin had arrived in Wei Xingyin Luo's body. Gu Xingyin was a little surprised to know that she had once again received a mission about vampires. However, when she finished reading the plot seriously, she understood that this was completely different from the vampire world she had experienced before. The living habits of the vampires in that era were closer to the aristocrats of the Middle Ages. They were arrogant, powerful, and did whatever they wanted. They disdained humans and existed arrogantly. They even clearly separated their lives from the lives of ordinary humans. But this world was different. Ordinary humans didn't know about the existence of vampires at all. Vampires quietly integrated into the human world and coexisted with them. Even the changes of time made their physique and blood evolve, and they were no longer afraid of the sun. As the noblest pure-blooded vampire, Weisheng Ingluo even had to go to school like ordinary humans. Humans and vampires coexisted peacefully with each other. Today was Sunday, so there was no school. Gu Xingyin lazily stayed in the Weisheng family's castle. She slowly organized the plot of this world. The female lead of this world, Weisheng Ingluo, was the princess of the Weisheng family, a pure-blooded vampire aristocrat. In this generation, the Weisheng family had two pure-blooded heirs. The eldest son, Weisheng Liang, and the second daughter, Weisheng Ingluo. Although they were the eldest son and the second daughter, they were only born a few minutes apart. That's right, Weisheng Liang and Weisheng Ingluo were twins. However, a vampire's appearance was determined by their power. Weisheng Liang, the elder brother, had absorbed too much of his mother's power when he was in her womb. As a result, Weisheng Liang had the appearance of an adult man, and had been in charge of the Weisheng family's business empire overseas. As for Weisheng Ingluo, she had maintained the appearance of a 16 or 17-year-old girl. According to the tradition of the vampire family, if there were two pure-blooded members in the family, one male and one female, then in order to maintain the purity of the family bloodline, it would be best for these two to become partners, and continue to be the heir of the family with the purest bloodline. This was a very common occurrence among purebloods. For example, Weisheng Ingluo's biological parents were a pair of siblings. Gu Xingyin was speechless. It was only because vampires didn't have to worry about genetic mutations that they dared to do this. Vampires had long lifespans and unlimited wealth. According to the original plan, Weisheng Ingluo would have been engaged to Weisheng Liang, who had returned to the country after 3 years of schooling. Afterwards, they would have gotten married as soon as possible and given birth to an heir. After the heir grew up, she would be able to put down her burdens and enjoy life to the fullest, just like her parents. Her life, from the beginning to the end, would not have any problems. In short, she was a winner in life. Chapter 1044. But the winner in life met another girl with a sense of justice. Vampire hunter Xiao Zhanggui. Strictly speaking, Xiao Zhanggui wasn't even a qualified vampire hunter. She was a girl who was very curious about all kinds of supernatural things since she was young. At the age of 15, by chance, she obtained a special ability to see through all non-human disguises. It was this special ability that led her to be found by the Vampire Hunter Association, and let her join them. Xiao Zhanggui, on the other hand, had been brainwashed by the Vampire Hunter Association to believe that vampires were the dirtiest and most evil creatures in the world. Her biggest goal in life was to eliminate all vampires in the world. However, she didn't have any talent. The Vampire Hunter Association valued her ability to sense vampires at the first instance, and wanted her to serve the entire association. And when she transferred to St. Radia High School, she recognized the pureblood vampire Weisheng Ingluo at first glance. Xiao Zhanggui kept going against Weisheng Ingluo, and Weisheng Ingluo didn't know why, but she felt that this human was really interesting, and always used a teasing attitude to tease her. But this vampire hunter with no ability actually accidentally broke into her territory when she was at her weakest. Xiao Zhanggui didn't have any good feelings towards vampires. Seeing Weisheng Ingluo unconscious on the ground, he didn't hesitate to stab a special silver tool into her heart. She didn't die, but her body was taken to the Vampire Hunter Association and was permanently sealed. When Weisheng Ingluo came back from abroad, what she took back from the Vampire Hunter Association was her sister's cold body without any warmth. After Gu Xingyin finished reading, she felt a bit strange. It was too unreasonable. She asked, "System, I think it's very strange." System. If the host has any questions, you can ask. Gu Xingyin said. Weisheng Ingluo is still a pureblood princess. When she's at her weakest, shouldn't she be staying in her castle? And with her noble status, shouldn't there be vampires guarding her? That Xiao Zhanggui is such a weak vampire hunter. How did he come to the place where she was unconscious and almost killed her? The system was silent for a moment. After a while, it finally answered Gu Xingyin's question. In some worlds, due to various reasons, in order to follow a certain plot, all unreasonable aspects will be weakened. Host, please don't look at things with logic. Without logic? Then. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. Then can I not follow logic when completing the quest? The system said. As long as it doesn't violate the character settings, it won't be a big problem. Gu Xingyin nodded and seemed very satisfied. That's good. The system. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door, and the butler's voice sounded. Your Highness Ing Luo, His Highness Liang will return tonight. What? Would Wei Xing Liang return? Gu Xingyin was shocked. If she remembered correctly, Wei Xing Liang had been abroad all this time, and only rushed back when he found out about his sister. The two siblings rarely saw each other after growing up, and their relationship wasn't very close. Why did he suddenly come back? Chapter 1045. Gu Xingyin asked with some surprise. Brother came back so suddenly? The housekeeper outside the door answered very respectfully. His Highness Liang just informed me. He said that he will have dinner with you tonight. Gu Xingyin looked up at the time. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. I know, she replied. The siblings hadn't seen each other for 6 years, so it had to be a bit more formal. Gu Xingyin was no longer lying on the bed, but got up and opened the wardrobe. As vampires with eternal life, their wealth could no longer be measured by ordinary standards. At least Gu Xingyin knew that if any luxury clothing brand in the world released women's clothing, as long as Wei Xing Ingluo took a fancy to it, it would inevitably appear in her wardrobe the next day. She swiped her fingers and finally chose a small pink dress that wasn't grand or gorgeous. The clothes-fitting design perfectly displayed her graceful figure, and the soft pink clothes made her skin look even fairer and more translucent. Her hair was loosely tied up, revealing 2 naughty strands of hair hanging by her cheeks. A sweet and cute little girl instantly appeared in the mirror. Sitting in the living room early, Gu Xingyin showed great interest in Wei Xing Ingluo, who claimed to be the most powerful heir of a pure-blood vampire family. She had felt the power in this body before. After all, she was a pure-blood, and although Wei Xing Ingluo's strength couldn't be considered top-notch, it was still very good. That's right, system. What about the skill draw of my world? The system didn't talk nonsense, and after the white light flashed, it gave Gu Xingyin a pleasant surprise. A cup of Princess Brooke's blood, plus the princess's innate charm skill? Gu Xingyin silently looked at the cup of bright red blood, not knowing what to say. In terms of preciousness, the power of this cup of blood was without a doubt. Vampires were noble in terms of bloodline, and most of their power came from the bloodline. This was also the reason why the Wei Xing family could persist in the marriage of pure blood members. There was no doubt that the blood of the Queen of the Brute clan, one of the 13 clans, was an irresistible temptation to any vampire in this world. Most importantly, Gu Xingyin didn't drink blood. No matter how many times she had been a vampire, or how many missions she had completed, she had no interest in such smelly things. Unlike Gu Xingyin, the system could not understand why Gu Xingyin did not speak for so long. The system was still very straightforward, so it asked directly, Host, is there a problem? Gu Xingyin pointed at the cup of blood. I don't drink blood. The system seemed very surprised. Host, who said you had to drink it? Gu Xingyin. A white light flashed from the system, and Gu Xingyin could only watch as the cup of blood turned into a blood-red light and entered his body. Almost in the blink of an eye, she felt that her body was full of power. Something was boiling in her body, and her waist-length hair grew uncontrollably until it reached her knees. Gu Xingyin used almost all of her strength to suppress the growth of her body, and continue to maintain the appearance of a young girl. If there was such a big change overnight, it would be difficult for her to explain the reason. Fortunately, she was sitting alone in the living room, and the housekeeper and maids did not dare to disturb her unless she summoned them. Therefore, the scene just now was not seen by anyone. Suddenly, she sensed something. Her eyes moved, and she looked in the direction of the door. He was here. I'm really sorry for today. The update is very late. I don't think I can finish the 4th chapter. I'm sorry, everyone. Whatever is missing today will be counted according to the 8th chapter. I'll make up for it tomorrow. I still owe 3 chapters in the past. I remember all of them. Gigi had always wanted to save some manuscripts, but every time something happened, the things she saved in a week were not enough for a day. Don't wait, everyone. Good night. Chapter 1046. That kind of attraction and intimacy that came from their bloodline made Gu Xingyin want to rush up, pull open the door, and take a good look at her own twin brother. She tried her best to resist this almost irresistible impulse, and then stood up. The door was open from the outside, and under the respectful gazes of the housekeeper and servants, a figure wearing a silver-gray long windbreaker appeared at the door. He was very tall, with a slender figure, and under his messy hair were deep and sharp eyes. His nose was straight, and below that were perfectly shaped thin lips. Wei Xingliang also immediately turned his gaze to the place that tugged at his heart. The intimacy of blood, especially for a pure-blooded, was the most irresistible feeling. Then he saw a small pink figure rushing towards him at an extremely fast speed. Wei Xingliang subconsciously wanted to avoid it. He didn't like strangers getting close to him. But he immediately remembered that this wasn't anyone else, but his sister Ying Luo. Just as he paused, that soft figure crashed into his arms. Wei Xingliang's body reacted faster than his mind, and hugged the figure in his arms. Gu Xingyin hugged him tightly and took a deep breath of the familiar lotus fragrance. Then, she raised her head and looked at Wei Xing with her large eyes. She smiled coldly and said, "Big brother, you finally thought of coming back to see me. I missed you so much." Her glass-like eyes were filled with undisguised joy and attachment. Wei Xingliang was startled. He hadn't spent much time with this sister. He vaguely remembered that the two of them had a very good relationship when they were young. He had been warned by his parents since he was young that Ying Luo was his sister and fiancée, and that he had to take good care of her. But after he was 10 years old, he was sent abroad, and the two siblings hadn't seen each other for a long time. Even their communication was very rare. He thought that Ying Luo would feel unfamiliar with him, but he didn't expect that she would still stick to him like before. Thinking of this, a secret joy rose in Wei Xingliang's heart. This was his sister, the only one in the world who had the same blood as him, Wei Xingying Luo. He lowered his head, and gently planted a kiss on Gu Xingyin's forehead. He couldn't help but reveal a smile. "Ying Luo, big brother missed you too." Gu Xingyin's ears twitched when he heard his deep voice. He thought to himself, even his voice is so seductive. She reached out and touched her ears. Blushing slightly, she asked embarrassedly, "Brother, why did you suddenly come back?" Wei Xingliang looked at her bashful expression and snickered inwardly. He got closer and closer to Gu Xingyin, lowered his voice and said in her ear, "There's nothing big going on in the company during this time, so I came back to stay for a while, and also came back to see my Ying Luo." He looked at his sister's ears with satisfaction. Because of his words, her ears were dyed with a thin layer of red. There was a layer of pink on her sparkling white skin. It was indescribably cute and seductive, making people want to take a bite. In fact, that was exactly what Wei Xingliang thought. Not only did he have such thoughts, he didn't even try to hide his desire as he leaned over and bit her. Feeling the tingling pain in her ears, Gu Xingyin looked at Wei Xingliang in disbelief. Was it really okay to act like a hooligan in front of his sister, whom he hadn't seen for several years? Oh no, she wasn't just his sister, she was also his fiancée. Thinking of this, what he did didn't seem to be too excessive. Chapter 1047. Wei Xingliang reluctantly let go of the earlobe that had been rubbed by his teeth until it was bright red. Wei Xingliang reluctantly used the tip of his tongue to gently sweep the white earlobe. He felt the person in his arms slightly tremble because of his movements, and he laughed deeply. Shy. He stretched out his finger and lifted Gu Xingyin's chin. Sure enough, the other's face was already completely red. He still felt it wasn't enough, and gently bit the corner of her lips. "Being so shy won't do, my Ying Luo." He laughed. "You are my fiancé, you have to get used to it." Get used to it? Get used to what? Gu Xingyin was a bit speechless. She knew that vampires had always been very indulgent with their desires, but she didn't expect the other party to be so open. Looking up and seeing the other's smiling face, Gu Xingyin resisted the urge to grind her teeth. She thought for a bit, and then smiled sweetly. She stood on her tiptoes and heavily bit Wei Xingliang's lips. She controlled the degree, and didn't break the skin and bleed, but the pain didn't lessen at all. Copying his actions, she licked the place she bit. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and smiled at Wei Xingliang. Brother's taste is also much better than I imagined. Wei Xingliang's eyes instantly darkened. He laughed lowly. Is that so? Then Luo, why don't you properly taste it again? His figure invaded Gu Xingyin's domain without any hesitation. His aura swept through Gu Xingyin's domain without restraint, until the latter was utterly defeated. This man was really petty. Gu Xingyin, who had recovered from her weak legs with great difficulty, glared at Wei Xingliang with some annoyance. Wasn't it just because he was stronger than her now? Just wait. She would pay him back one by one in the future. Wei Xingliang could only laugh out loud. His return to the country was originally a temporary plan, but he didn't expect to receive such a big surprise. Luo was much more interesting than he had imagined. The next morning, Gu Xingyin woke up on time. She opened her eyes and immediately realized that she was sleeping in a man's arms. Her head rested on his arm, and her waist was tightly held by a large and powerful hand. Her entire body was almost lying in his embrace. The memory of last night came back to him. Just as she was about to go to bed, Wei Xingliang called her to his room. What? Sleep here? Her eyes widened. Wei Xingliang said seriously. You and I are engaged. Is there a problem? Gu Xingyin was speechless. What he said made sense. She was speechless. What made her even more speechless was that the vampire butler, who had watched her grow up, did not object at all. He even seemed to be very happy as he moved her daily necessities into the cool room. Anyway, the place was big, and it would not be crowded with one more person. As a result, Gu Xingyin successfully lived with her brother under everyone's delighted gazes. The memory stopped here. What are you thinking about? His deep voice still had the lazy hoarseness of the morning. It was extremely sexy. Gu Xingyin was awakened early in the morning. Hearing this, she replied, Nothing, I should go to school. As if dissatisfied with her perfunctory answer, Gu Xingyin only felt her waist tighten. Then her body turned, and she was lying on Wei Xingliang's chest. Their eyes met. Nothing in. Chapter 1048. Gu Xingyin struggled for a bit, then gave up and said, Brother, put me down, I still have to go to school. Wei Xingliang ignored her words, only reaching out a hand to caress her lips. Tell me what you were thinking just now, and I'll let you go. Gu Xingyin. This man, why was his temper so overbearing? She told the truth. I miss my own bed. The hand on her waist tightened again, and the man's snort of laughter came. It seems that brother did something to making Luo dissatisfied? Gu Xingyin looked at the time again. If she didn't get up now, she would really be late. Although being late wasn't a big deal for her, she had something important to do today. Gu Xingyin hurriedly begged for mercy. No brother, you're the best, everything is good, I'm just not used to it for a while. Seeing that she really seemed to be in a hurry, Wei Xingliang reluctantly let her go. Sleep more, you'll get used to it. Gu Xingyin nimbly got up, and hurriedly went into the bathroom to finish her business. Goodbye, brother. Wei Xingliang propped his head up on the bed, watching his sister quickly go out the door. Gu Xingyin finished her meal, and under the escort of her family's driver, she went to St. Radia High School. St. Radia High School, just from this impressive name, it was obvious that this wasn't a simple school. That's right, this was a legendary, aristocratic school among aristocratic schools, the top aristocratic high school. Sure enough, it was very rich. This was the feeling Gu Xingyin had as she walked from the school gate to the classroom. She went to her own class, and quietly sat in her seat, waiting for Xiao Zhanggui's arrival. That's right. Today was the day that Onmyoji Xiao Zhanggui transferred to St. Radia High School. Although Xiao Zhanggui's family background wasn't bad, she didn't have the ability to go to St. Radia High School. This was the qualification that the Vampire Hunter Association had specially applied for her. After so many years of dealing with vampires, The Vampire Hunter Association had a good understanding of this race. They knew that their lifestyle was not something that could be described as simply extravagant. Naturally, they would not let go of a place like St. Rhodia. Who would have thought that they would actually catch a pure-blooded by chance? There was no morning self-study here. The bell for the first class rang on time. Gu Xingyin sat quietly in her seat, waiting for Xiao Zhanggui's arrival. "Students, there's a new student in our class today. Let's welcome her." The gentle voice of the homeroom teacher sounded from the podium, but the response of the students below was rather perfunctory. Only a few people followed suit and clapped their hands. The homeroom teacher's expression was a little awkward, but she didn't dare to say anything. None of the students who could come to school here had simple family backgrounds. She couldn't afford to offend any of them. Xiao Zhanggui stood uneasily on the podium. Looking down at the well-dressed students, he said, "Hello everyone. My name is Xiao Zhanggui. I'm very happy to be able to come to this class. Her self-introduction was suddenly interrupted. Her eyes widened as she excitedly pointed at Gu Xingyin. Vampire. The eyes of the entire class fell on her and Gu Xingyin. However, too many people just reflexively followed her gaze. After glancing at Gu Xingyin, they began to look at Xiao Zhanggui as if she was an idiot. Vampires? Did this newcomer read too many hot-blooded anime novels? Chapter 1049. Gu Xingyin looked around in surprise, then confirmed that the person Xiao Zhanggui was pointing at was her. She pointed at herself very strangely. "This student, are you talking about me?" Seeing her like this, Xiao Zhanggui knew in his heart that she was pretending, but his face was cold. "Evil vampire, don't pretend anymore. I don't know what your purpose is in lurking in this school, but I, Xiao Zhanggui, will never let you succeed." The class teacher who had been standing on the side and didn't understand the situation. The students who were dumbfounded the whole time. Gu Xingyin, who knew the truth. Although she knew the plot and understood that Xiao Zhanggui's EQ was a shortcoming, she really didn't find it challenging at all to be this stupid. Gu Xingyin held her forehead. The whole class seemed to feel a strong sense of powerlessness from her movements. Xiao Zhanggui still felt that the other party was frightened by his momentum, and was about to continue. The class teacher next to him couldn't bear it anymore and said, "Enough. Student Xiao Zhanggui, there should be a limit to your jokes." Xiao Zhanggui was stunned. "What joke?" She looked at the class teacher and said, "I'm not joking, what I said is true. That girl is really a vampire. Vampires feed on human blood. She'll kill you." The class teacher endured, and stopped herself from looking at Xiao Zhanggui as if she was looking at a psychopath. Ying Luo has been studying here for more than a year, and hasn't seen anything happen to our St. Rhodia High School. But student Xiao Zhanggui, if you continue to disturb the order and spread rumors like this, I will personally report the situation to the Academic Affairs Office. Xiao Zhanggui looked at the class teacher in disbelief. She was clearly saving them. Why didn't she believe it? She looked at the students below the stage, and found that they were all looking at her with strange and mocking eyes, as if she was the monster that would eat people. And that vampire, she looked at Gu Xingyin. That vampire looked at her expressionlessly, but Xiao Zhanggui saw the mockery in her eyes. "See, so what if you're telling the truth? Not a single person will believe what you say." She took a deep breath and said resolutely to everyone, "Just wait and see. I will prove what I said." Because of what happened to Xiao Zhanggui just now, the homeroom teacher didn't have a good impression of this student. She randomly pointed at a spot far away from Gu Xingyin, and left the classroom. Gu Xingyin thought that Xiao Zhanggui would not be able to resist coming to her during the break. She did not expect that Xiao Zhanggui was more patient than she thought. She didn't come over to look for her. She just kept staring at her with a creepy gaze. Gu Xingyin knew that she was afraid that he would run away. But in the eyes of others, Xiao Zhanggui's behavior was very suspicious. "Ying Luo." Gu Xingyin's deskmate came over quietly and whispered, "Is that newcomer Xiao Zhanggui a pervert? I saw him staring at you. You have to be careful when you go home from school. I'm afraid that this kind of person's brain is not clear, and will find trouble with you." "Thank you, Lily, I'll be fine." Gu Xingyin smiled and shook her head. Of course she would be fine. The one who would be in trouble would be Xiao Zhangguo. After school, Gu Xingyin went out of the classroom alone with his backpack. Xiao Zhangguo followed. 4 chapters. Today's update is 12,000. There are 8 more chapters. See you later. In addition, you all found that spicy Xiao Zhangguo, right? That's right, it's that Xiao Zhangguo you think it is. The spicy cute Xiao Zhangguo who wrote 100 Ways to Quickly Pass Through the Prince Charming. I guarantee that she won't live past the 10th chapter. Finally, tickets. Chapter 1050. When Gu Xingyin went out today, she specifically told the driver not to come out to pick her up today, just to give Xiao Zhangguo a chance to approach her alone. She walked slowly, as if she didn't notice that someone was following behind her, until she reached a deserted alley. Xiao Zhangguo finally had a chance to appear after following her all the way. Wei Xingyin Luo, stop. She appeared from behind the wall and shouted at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin stopped in her tracks. Student Xiao Zhangguo, why are you looking for me? Her expression was very innocent. Xiao Zhangguo said coldly. There's only the 2 of us here, don't pretend anymore. Damn vampire, I'm here to deal with you. Damn vampire? Gu Xingyin repeated softly. At the same time, an invisible barrier slowly enveloped the alley, and the pedestrians outside would temporarily forget about this place. Gu Xingyin put away the smile on her face. So what if I'm a vampire? Student Xiao Zhangguo. Xiao Zhangguo's eyes lit up, and with a shake of her hand, a silver chain appeared in her hands out of nowhere. Gu Xingyin's heart flashed with a trace of disgust. That was silverware. Gu Xingyin said. You've heard the teacher talk about it, haven't you? I've been at St. Rhodia High School for 2 years, and nothing has ever happened in the school. It's even because of my existence that those monsters don't dare to come to this school to look for food. I've never killed any humans. Purebloods like them also had dignity, and didn't need to look for humans themselves. Xiao Zhangguo didn't listen to her at all. You're just quibbling by saying so much. You can't hide the nature of a dirty vampire at all. Gu Xingyin laughed softly. Then what do you want? Xiao Zhangguo took out the chain in her hand. Of course it's to kill you. Gu Xingyin could clearly see that the chain was aimed at her heart without any hesitation. Xiao Zhangguo really wanted to kill her. Shua. The chain instantly pierced through her chest. Gu Xingyin seemed to be stunned for a moment. Success! Xiao Zhangguo's eyes lit up. However, before she could rejoice for too long, a soft whisper entered her ears. Oh, what succeeded? Wei Xingyin Luo's voice. Xiao Zhangguo looked at the other end of the chain. Sure enough, the thing that was pierced by the chain was only an illusion. It was now slowly dissipating. Suddenly he felt a chill in his chest. Xiao Zhangguo seemed to have sensed something and lowered his head with some difficulty. Her heart was pierced through by a snow-white hand. Vampire hunter who wants my life, it's better if you don't stay in this world. Gu Xingyin smiled as she pulled her hand out. There wasn't even a trace of blood on it. Xiao Zhangguo only felt that his heart was empty, as if something very important was missing. What was it? It was his heart. Gu Xingyin's hand just now had directly crushed her heart. Xiao Zhangguo's eyes suddenly widened, and then an intense pain came from his heart. Gu Xingyin didn't look at the person lying on the ground behind her, and turned to leave. Soon, someone from the Vampire Hunter Association would come and take her body away. Walking out of the alley, Gu Xingyin turned her head. Brother? Chapter 1051. Ingluo? Ingluo? Wei Xingliang called out to Gu Xingyin with some dissatisfaction. Was his charm that bad? He turned over and leaned over Gu Xingyin's body, hatefully biting Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses, looking at Wei Xingliang who seemed to be in a very bad mood with some bafflement. What's the matter? You're still not happy after eating meat? Her misty eyes made the dark fire in Wei Xingliang's heart quietly dissipate. He sighed, gently licking the place he had just bitten with the tip of his tongue. He really didn't know what to do with her. That's right, big brother. Gu Xingyin suddenly asked. If we want to destroy the Vampire Hunter Association, will it be difficult? Wei Xingliang's movements paused, asking. Why did you suddenly think of this? He immediately thought of that stupid vampire hunter during the day. Was Ying Luo so angry? Since Ying Luo didn't like it, then there was no use keeping the Vampire Hunter Association. He said carelessly, Vampire Hunter Association? That's the group that wants to destroy us vampires all day in the name of justice? They're just a bunch of mobs. If we really want to make a move, our Weisheng family is enough. Gu Xingyin was secretly happy, but Weisheng Liang frowned. There are several high-level members in the Vampire Hunter Association who seem to have connections with other pureblood families. Gu Xingyin knew about this. When she read the original plot, she knew that the Vampire Hunter Association wasn't as righteous as they said. On the contrary, the association was divided into two factions, the radical faction and the moderate faction. The radical faction advocated that vampires and vampires couldn't coexist and must be killed on sight. Like Xiao Zhonggui from before, he was a member of the radical faction. But the moderate faction was different. They had always strived to find a point where humans and vampires could live in harmony, and this had always been their goal for so many years. Both sides had always been committed to internal strife for their own interests, and had no achievements in dealing with vampires. In fact, many of the vampire hunters in the Vampire Hunters Association had already been contacted by some vampire nobles in private. Every time there was a big movement in the Vampire Hunter Association, a few of the vampire nobles would receive the news long in advance. Perhaps Xiao Zhonggui died without knowing that the Vampire Hunter Association, which had always been synonymous with justice and fearlessness in her heart, was actually so filthy. Gu Xingyin carefully thought again, and felt that dealing with such an organization didn't seem too difficult. System, I accept the mission. The system had mentioned before that this kind of additional mission would allow him to receive more souls after completing it. It was still profitable. Weisheng Liang looked up and saw that Gu Xingyin had fallen silent again. She thought that Gu Xingyin was dissatisfied with her words. He reached out and stroked Gu Xingyin's long and smooth black hair, coaxing softly. Okay, if you really don't like the Vampire Hunter Association, I'll go visit those families tomorrow and let them know in advance. He had originally thought that it would be quite troublesome. The existence of the Vampire Hunters Association would at most have some effect on some low-level vampires. For pure-blooded nobles like them, those people were just playing monkeys, and would not pose any threat to them at all. But who told Ying Luo not to like it? He thought somewhat helplessly. Girls are really very delicate. But unfortunately he loved this delicate side of her. Chapter 1052. The next day, Gu Xingyin went to school. Of course, Xiao Zhonggui wouldn't come, and none of the students in the class were interested in her. After all, she was just a newcomer who had left a bad impression on everyone, so no one was in the mood to pay attention to her. Gu Xingyin wasn't worried about anything else. The Vampire Hunter Association would definitely take care of everything. Sure enough, when the homeroom teacher came in, there wasn't any unnatural expression on her face. Students, the newcomer yesterday, Xiao Zhonggui, can't continue to study in our class because of family reasons. Oh, a few people dragged out their words to show that they understood. The homeroom teacher didn't mind, and just announced the start of class. After school, Gu Xingyin saw a familiar car at the school gate. But there wasn't a driver waiting for her in the driver's seat, but a tall man leaning against the car. Wow. Ying Luo, is that your car? Who's that handsome guy? The girl walking beside Gu Xingyin looked at Weisheng Liang with shining eyes. This appearance, this figure, this temperament, he was simply the best among men. Gu Xingyin looked at her brother with some appreciation, and then smiled at the girl. My fiancé. The girl immediately retracted her gaze from Weisheng Liang. If that handsome guy didn't have an owner, she wouldn't mind striking up a conversation and getting his contact information. Maybe even a romantic relationship would start. But if he was someone else's fiancé, the girl shrugged. Forget it, don't provoke someone who already has an owner, that's the most basic principle. Then see you tomorrow, Ying Luo. The girl winked at Gu Xingyin. Then she lowered her voice and said mysteriously, You're so lucky your fiancé is so handsome. He even personally picked you up from school. She left enviously. Gu Xingyin walked towards Weisheng Liang. As soon as she came to his side, Wei Xingliang very naturally took her backpack with one hand and skillfully pulled her hand into his embrace with the other. A passionate kiss landed on her lips. Wow, cool. There were many people coming and going at the school gate. Many students and passers-by saw the scene. The students loved to watch a good show and weren't afraid of things getting out of hand. A few of them even started to clap and whistle. Gu Xingyin was kissed until she was dizzy. She glanced at the people around her and saw that they were all looking at her with burning eyes. So many people are watching, she said in a low voice. She meant for him to be more careful. Wei Xingliang looked at her and smiled. I'm your fiancé, and you're my fiancé. What's wrong with us doing this? Just now, the conversation between Ing Luo and that girl, although their voices weren't loud, he heard every single word. Hearing her proclaim that he was her fiancé, Wei Xingliang felt that the cold blood in his body, which was unique to vampires, seemed to be boiling. Ing Luo, she could always control his emotions so easily. The two of them entered the car. Gu Xingyin realized that the car did not seem to be heading home. Where are we going? She was puzzled. Wei Xingliang turned his head and glanced at her. Don't you want to destroy the Vampire Hunter Association? I'll take you to meet a few people. Vomiting blood. There were 3 more updates before 12 o'clock. Please vote. Chapter 1053. For Wei Xingliang to meet him personally, it was naturally a vampire of equal status. With such status, and a vampire known for his extravagant lifestyle, Gu Xingyin could already foresee the scene of a tycoon. The result was as expected. The address was in the castle of another pureblood vampire family, the Beitang family. When Wei Xingliang and Gu Xingyin arrived, the entire castle was already brightly lit. Faint noises could be heard from inside. A waiter respectfully came forward and led the two of them through the castle's gate. The scene before them appeared before their eyes. Almost at the same time, Wei Xingliang turned sideways, blocking Gu Xingyin's line of sight. Don't look. Then, a huge pressure belonging to a pure blood swept through the entire hall. The vampires who were partying on the dance floor all knelt down, trembling. They didn't understand why this master was suddenly angry. Get out of here, Wei Xingliang said coldly. None of the vampires dared to say a word, and they hurriedly left through the gate. In the blink of an eye, the only sound left in the hall was the music. The noisy and rhythmic music suddenly stopped, and at the same time, a lazy male voice sounded from the second floor. You're still so cold, Liang. There were quite a few beauties at the ball just now. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw a boy with short silver hair nimbly jump down from the balcony on the second floor. So you brought someone? The silver-haired boy glanced at Gu Xingyin, a trace of surprise flashing through his eyes. This is the princess of the Weixing family, Miss Ing Luo, right? Hello, I'm Beitang Sun. Gu Xingyin smiled and greeted him. Beitang Sun was a famous playboy among the pure-blood nobles. It was said that he changed girlfriends faster than he changed clothes. However, he was powerful and had a noble bloodline. Even though he was known as a playboy, there were still countless female vampires who wanted to get close to him and have a good time with him. Wei Xingliang didn't want his sister to have too much contact with him, so he changed the topic. Where are the others? This others was the representative of the other 2 pure-blood noble families. Beit Engsun looked upstairs. They're all here. They're upstairs. There were only 4 pure-blooded vampire families left in the world. The Weixing family, the Beitang family, the Fujiwara family, and the Suzumiya family. Of the 4 clans, the Weixing clan was the most powerful. Therefore, when Wei Xingliang proposed a meeting, the other families could not refuse. Fujiwara Shizuru from the Fujiwara family and Gu Xingyin from the Suzumiya family had both met before, which saved him the trouble of introducing them. After the 5 of them were seated, Wei Xingliang went straight to the point. I'm here today to talk to you about the Vampire Hunter Association. Shizuru Fujiwara was an extremely charming and seductive woman. She raised her eyebrows lazily. Vampire Hunter Association? What kind of organization is this? A few bored humans formed to deal with us? What happened to them? Wei Xingliang glanced at her. Tung Tongjing's personality was the most arrogant among the 3 of them. She was also the only pure-blooded among the three who did not have any involvement with the Vampire Hunter Association. The reason she didn't have any involvement was very simple. She looked down on humans. She even looked down on mixed-blooded vampires, let alone humans who were inferior in the eyes of vampires. Wei Xingliang said in a low voice, "I'm here today to tell you that the Weixing clan is preparing to make a move against the Vampire Hunter Association. Speaking of which, don't you think that the names in this story are very, elementary school style?" Gao Lingji expressed that she had racked her brains and thought for a long time before coming up with this name. Chapter 1054. Shirzua Fujiwara didn't react to Wei Xingliang's words. But it was different for Beitang Sun and Ryagakuwa. Beitang Sun's lazy expression finally turned serious. He looked at Wei Xingliang. "What's wrong, Liang? Did those vampire hunters provoke you?" Wei Xingliang said in a cold voice. "There are vampire hunters trying to kill Luo. If we don't teach them a lesson, those humans who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth won't know their place." Beitang Sun looked strangely at Gu Xingyin, who had been silently sitting next to Wei Xingliang. He knew the power of a pureblood. An ordinary vampire hunter couldn't do anything to a pureblood like Wei Xingyin Luo. But Wei Xingliang was furious. He didn't want to let the Vampire Hunter Association off, just because his sister was fine. Beitang Xuandai thought about it for a moment. What if she had a younger sister, and she was targeted by the Vampire Association, and they even came to attack her? His reaction would be, he was silent for a moment. "What do you want to do?" "Absolutely intolerable." Ryagakuwa looked at Wei Xingliang. Wei Xingliang smiled coldly. "What do I want to do? Uproot them, of course." Beitang Sun was shocked. "That's not necessary, right? They just offended missing Luo. Just teach them a lesson." He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate several spies in the association. He didn't want to see this happen. Ryagakuwa frowned. "Your Weixing family doesn't have any business in the association, so you don't feel bad. But our Ryagakuwa family is different." Wei Xingliang's attitude was firm. "I'm here today to inform you in advance. Whether you agree or not, the Weixing family will act according to plan." Beitang Sun and Ryagakuwa didn't look too good. Only Shirzua Fujiwara clapped her hands. "I, Shirzua Fujiwara, only have one thing to say. If a man can't even take revenge when his sister and lover are bullied, what kind of man is he?" Wei Xingliang had become the head of the Weixing family ever since his parents stopped caring for him. Shirzua Fujiwara smiled at Wei Xingliang. "Head of the Weixing family, if you need our help, please don't hesitate." "Thank you." Wei Xingliang nodded. At this moment, Gu Xingyin spoke. She looked at the two men who were obviously not looking too good and asked, "Both of you have planted people in the Vampire Hunter Association. Then I would like to ask, have you received any news about the thing that the Vampire Hunter Association is secretly researching?" "Secret research?" Ryagakuwa and Beitang Sun looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. No, they didn't get any information. Seeing this, Gu Xingyin knew what was going on. She said, "When the two of you go home, you can ask someone to investigate. Then you'll know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Are your so-called confidants in the Vampire Hunter Association really loyal to the two of you?" When she said this, her tone was flat, as if there was no extra meaning. However, in the ears of the two pure-blooded nobles, they felt extremely ashamed. Since the other party dared to say it so openly, it meant that she was confident. However, the two who claimed to have spies in the Vampire Hunter Association didn't receive any news about this. This was a blatant slap to his face. Chapter 1055. In the end, Beitang Sun still wanted to salvage the situation. "Liang, missing Luo is fine. Can you?" "No." Wei Xingliang glanced at him coldly. "It's about Luo. No matter how small the matter is, we can't let it go." "You can think of it that way. Wei Xingyin Luo is my life." After saying that, he got up and took Gu Xingyin's hand to leave. "All right." He paused and said, "Next time when I come, please don't let those messy vampires in. It hurts my eyes." Beitang Sun was stunned as he watched the two walk away. Was that what he called an eyesore? Vampires were originally unrestrained and didn't have any moral integrity. It wasn't like Liang hadn't seen such gatherings overseas. Why did he suddenly dislike it? Fujiwara Shizu looked at him and sneered. You don't believe me when I say you're stupid. Wei Xingliang's words were clearly for his sister's sake. Didn't you see what he did first when he came in? When Wei Xingliang and Gu Xingyin came in, they were sitting on the second floor, separated by a door and a floor. But to the purebloods, this spatial barrier was nothing. They could still see what the other party was doing. Beitang Sun carefully recalled, and his face suddenly changed. No way, Liang, he treasures his sister so much? He couldn't believe it. For a vampire who played around with women, he felt that the most incredible thing in the world was so-called true love. Fujiwara Shizu looked at his stupid face, sneered, and stood up. Look at you two stupid faces. Wei Xingliang even said she's my life. Do you still think he's joking? I'm leaving too. You two should think about how to get out of this quickly and minimize the losses. The Weixing family won't stop this time. Fujiwara Shizu also left. Beitang Sun and Ryomi Akawa looked at each other silently for a while. That. Ryagakuwa spoke up. I'd better go home and contact the person in charge of the Vampire Hunter Association. As soon as Beitang Sun heard this, she knew that the Suzumiya family was prepared to stop. He frowned. Are we really going to listen to the Weixing clan? With the strength of our two clans, there's no need to. Ryomi Akawa interrupted. Kaoru, to be fair, destroying the Vampire Hunter Association is not a bad thing for us, is it? Beitang Sun was speechless. Of course, this was not a bad thing. No matter how much influence the two families had in the Vampire Hunters Association, the organization itself was still against all vampires. You're right. He sighed. I was wrong. That bit of energy and wealth was nothing to the Beitang clan. He might as well use this opportunity to curry favor with the Weixing family. Gaining a favor from the strongest pureblood clan, the Weixing clan, was far more valuable than anything else. On the other side, Gu Xingyin followed Wei Xingliang out of the Beitang family's castle. There was a smile on her face. She seemed very happy. What's wrong? Why are you so happy? Wei Xingliang couldn't help but smile. Because my brother said that I'm your life. Gu Xingyin smiled. This wasn't the first time she'd heard this from this man. But when she heard it, she felt the same joy in her heart. This should be the last 3 chapters of the 12th update on the 11th. But Gao Lingji had just finished writing, and was 15 minutes late. Sorry everyone. The 12th will be updated at 8 as usual. Finally, I'll ask for a round of votes every day. Chapter 1056. Little Fool. Wei Xingliang reached out and patted Gu Xingyin's head. He actually felt very novel. Ever since he was a child, his mother had told him that in the future, he, Wei Xingliang, would be the head of the Weixing family, and his younger sister, who was the same age as him, would be his future wife. So he had to work hard and make himself infinitely stronger. Because the women of the Weixing family were born princesses, they would receive the best protection and the best treatment. And the men of the Weixing family would always be the guardians of the women of the Weixing family. Before he was 10 years old, he and his younger sister lived together. The little Weixing Luo liked to stick to this handsome and very powerful brother of his. At that time, the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. Later on, he was sent abroad by his parents for 7 years. That was almost half of his entire life. That little girl in a pink tutu who would softly call him brother in his childhood was becoming more and more blurred in his memory. He liked his younger sister, but he didn't love her. But he had never doubted that he would marry Luo. This was something that was destined from birth. He would be good to her for the rest of his life, but he might not be able to give her his true heart. This was what Wei Xingliang had always thought. Until this unexpected return to the country. That little girl in his memory had become such a lively young girl. When she threw herself into his arms with a smile, his cold heart actually jumped at that moment. The young girl in his arms smiled like a flower, with an innocence that didn't know the ways of the world. But she could still wear such a smile and take someone's life without batting an eyelid. Wei Xingliang looked at this scene, and felt that his body temperature had never been so high. As a vampire, He actually had the feeling that his blood was boiling because of her. He knew that he had fallen in love with her. What a strange and natural thing. He had only been back for a few days, but he already loved her to the bone. But she was his destined wife. What was wrong with falling in love with her? Brother? The young girl's puzzled voice brought him back to reality. Brother, what are you thinking about? Wei Xingliang lowered his head and looked at the young girl who was looking up at him with concern. He smiled. I'm thinking, when is the best time for me and my Ying Luo to get married? He watched as the girl's face blushed instantly because of his words. Gu Xingyin really didn't think of this. Although the two of them had done what they were supposed to do, Wei Xingluo's body wasn't even 18 years old. Although vampires didn't care about whether they had reached adulthood or not. Wasn't this a little too early? Gu Xingyin voiced her thoughts. Wei Xingliang narrowed his eyes. Too early. With a tug of his hand, he pulled her into his embrace. Wei Xingluo still had the appearance of a young girl. She wasn't short among humans, but she wasn't tall either. On the other hand, Wei Xingliang was tall and had long legs, broad shoulders and a slim waist. With this hug, he pulled the girl into his embrace and hid her completely, not revealing anything. Haven't you and I done everything we should? Was our marriage contract set the moment we were born? Besides marrying me, do you still think of anyone else? What's the difference between us living together now and after marriage? So, do you still think it's too early? Chapter 1057. Gu Xingyin was left speechless by Wei Xingliang's questions. It seemed that there was no difference between what he said and what he said. However, something still seemed to be amiss. Wei Xingliang smiled as he looked at his sister who was staring at him in confusion. He didn't say anything and took her hand to go home. Gu Xingyin was in a daze as she listened to Wei Xingliang call the butler over and tell him that he would be staying here for a long time. Moreover, he asked the butler to start preparing for his and Gu Xingyin's wedding. Then Gu Xingyin looked at the butler who had always adhered to gentlemanly etiquette and had always been elegant and perfect. Because of this news, he was so excited that he almost burst into tears. Young Master Liang, you can rest assured that I will prepare everything as soon as possible and prepare a perfect wedding for you and Miss Ying Luo. Gu Xingyin watched the butler walk out with a gust of wind, and a white halo seemed to light up above his head. He's that happy? Wei Xingliang smiled. Don't you know that for the entire vampire race, the appearance of a pureblood's marriage is something worth celebrating? And that's not the point. The point is that they look forward to the birth of the next generation the most. Wei Xingliang whispered in her ear. I'm going to rest. I have to get up early for school tomorrow. Gu Xingyin cleverly changed the topic. Such a dangerous topic, she absolutely couldn't continue. And the matter of the Vampire Hunter Association seemed to have been temporarily put on hold. Gu Xingyin asked Wei Xingliang, but Wei Xingliang only said that it wasn't time yet. Trust brother, you don't have to worry about this matter. I will take care of it. Since Wei Xingliang said such words, Gu Xingyin didn't say anything more. Anyway, the mission mentioned by the system was to destroy the Vampire Hunter Association. It didn't say that she had to do it herself. Then, as long as the result was no problem, there wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, there wouldn't be anyone in the Vampire Hunter Association who could threaten her. The next day, Wei Xingliang personally sent Gu Xingyin to school. He seemed to have fallen in love with the feeling of taking care of everything around Gu Xingyin. I'll pick you up in the afternoon. He leaned over and kissed the corner of Gu Xingyin's lips. Then he got out of the car and opened the door for her. Gu Xingyin walked into the classroom as usual. Wei Xingyin Luo. An arrogant voice came from outside the classroom. Gu Xingyin looked over. A handsome boy with dyed yellow hair and silver cross-shaped earrings was looking at her. Song Hai. It was said that his family background was very powerful. In St. Radia High School, where the rich were everywhere, his family situation could be considered to be one of the best. It was rumored that this person had a bad temper. Although he was very handsome, his reputation was not very good. Not many girls dared to provoke him. Gu Xingyin thought about it carefully. She did not know this Song Hai. In her impression, the two of them had never interacted before. Her deskmate Lily whispered to her. Ying Luo, do you know this Song Hai? Gu Xingyin shook her head. I don't know. Wei Xingyin Luo? Outside, Song Hai didn't hear any response from Gu Xingyin, so he frowned and shouted. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on her, Gu Xingyin stood up. May I ask this classmate, why are you looking for me? She asked. Song Hai was originally very overbearing, but when Gu Xingyin really stood in front of him, his face suddenly turned red. Gu Xingyin, she had a bad feeling in her heart. Chapter 1058. Sure enough, Song Hai turned his head away shyly and asked dryly. I heard that you have a fiancé? There was nothing to hide. Gu Xingyin nodded. Song Hai's expression suddenly became very strange. He seemed to want to fiercely glare at Gu Xingyin, but he subconsciously didn't want to go too far with her. The expression on his face was simply wonderful. You and him, when did this happen? After struggling for a long time, he could only ask this question. Gu Xingyin looked at him. Our two families decided on this marriage when we were young. Song Hai's eyes lit up. Then do you like him? If you don't like him, I can. Gu Xingyin interrupted him. Classmate Song Hai, I don't know you very well. It's very rude of you to inquire about my privacy like this. My relationship with him is very good. Please don't casually question us. Song Hai's expression became gloomy. He didn't speak. Gu Xingyin glanced around the classroom and found that many students, although holding books in their hands, still looked over from time to time. It was obvious that the students were very interested in gossip. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to the classroom first. Class is about to start. Song Hai reached out to stop her. Wait a minute. He stood in front of Gu Xingyin and looked at her seriously. There are some things that I still feel like I have to tell you. I like you, Wei Xingyin Luo. I've liked you since the first day you entered this school. He looked somewhat powerlessly at the girl who didn't feel surprised or incredulous after hearing his words. Perhaps it's the so-called love at first sight. But my family is very strict with me, and has also arranged for me to be a fiancé from another family since I was young, so I've never mentioned it to you. Until yesterday, when I heard people say that you kissed someone at the school gate, I couldn't help it. Song Hai looked at her seriously. Even if I know that it's impossible for me to be with you, I still want you to know that there's a boy who has liked you for a year. Finally, I wish you happiness. Gu Xingyin finally looked up. Thank you. When the bell rang, she walked past Song Hai and into the classroom. Song Hai wasn't in a hurry to go to class. Instead, he stood there quietly, watching the delicate girl walk away without looking back, getting further and further away from him. His hands that were hanging by his side opened in vain, as if he was trying his best to hold on to something, but in the end he could only grab a ball of air. It was something that had never belonged to him in the first place, so how could he possibly grab it? Song Hai's eyes were a little red. Finally, he turned around and left with big strides. Gu Xingyin's deskmate still wanted to gossip with her, but Gu Xingyin didn't want to use a teenage boy's crush as a topic for others to gossip about, so she brushed him off with a few words. What she didn't expect was that after school, Wei Xingliang would kiss her again at the school gate. What are you doing? Gu Xingyin looked at him reproachfully. This man, did he think that she was too low-key in school? Wei Xingliang's eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept across a certain place, and then gently pecked her moist red lips, declaring sovereignty. What? Gu Xingyin felt a little strange. Her heart suddenly moved, and she suddenly saw Song Hai's figure in the crowd. Chapter 1059. Sure enough. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at Wei Xingliang. How did you know? No, the point is it worth it? Wei Xingliang glanced at Song Hai, who had been watching them from the crowd. As long as it's something to do with you, I know everything about it. Ying Luo, it's impossible for me to put you in a place where I can't see you. This was his paranoia. As for the second question, of course it's worth it. Daring to covet my Ying Luo, for me in this world, is even more unbearable than wanting to suck my blood. It was easy to imagine how precious the blood of a pure-blooded vampire was. For those low-level vampires, if they could get a trace of pure-blooded blood, it was almost equivalent to a risk-free promotion. There were even many free vampires who longed to be favored by pure-blooded vampires, and willingly became their slaves. Submitting to the strong wasn't a shameful thing. What they could obtain, however, was great power and a long lifespan. Correspondingly, the pride of pure-blooded vampires was well known. No pure-blooded would easily give their blood to others. For them, blood was a symbol of noble status. And in Wei Xingliang's words, there was no doubt that he put Gu Xingyin in the most important position in his heart. Even if it was just words of love. There was no woman who could resist such words of love. Gu Xingyin smiled with satisfaction. Brother, why are you so good at talking? I dare say that as long as you want. There is no woman in this world who can resist your charm and your sweet words. Wei Xingliang also smiled. It's just that in this world, there is only one Ying Luo who is worthy of me showing my charm and listening to my sweet words. When he said this, in addition to a strong pampering tone, there was also an unconcealable arrogance. As he said, there was only one Wei Xing Ying Luo in this world. Worthy of Wei Xingliang, he was willing to do everything to make her smile. Song Hai stared blankly at the two people chatting intimately. He had liked Wei Xing Ying Luo for more than a year, and had secretly observed her for a year. He had never seen so much on her face. If he had to describe it in words, it would probably be sweet. The happiness between her eyebrows was almost overflowing. It seemed that she really liked that man. Just as he was silently staring blankly, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that the man turned his head and his gaze seemed to pause on him for a moment. It was just a glance, and there was no warning in it. It was as if it was just a casual glance, but it made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. By the time Song Hai reacted, the two of them had already gotten into the car and left. Why did you have to scare him? Gu Xingyin complained. She had clearly seen that Wei Xingliang's glance was not a simple one. Song Hai would probably have nightmares for 2 days after experiencing this. Wei Xingliang asked her innocently, What? What was he trying to scare? Why can't I understand what you're saying? Gu Xingyin looked at the man who had a serious expression and a smile on his face. He looked like a male god. As long as you're happy. Wei Xingliang maintained his smile. Daring to covet my Ying Luo, if I don't let you taste a bit of bitterness, how can you learn your lesson? Chapter 1060. As soon as they returned to the Weixing family, the housekeeper greeted them. Miss Ying Luo, please take a look. The gowns and jewelry samples have been sent over. In addition, I've already informed Master and Madam. They will be back in 3 days, and, as soon as the housekeeper saw Gu Xingyin, he began to ramble. Gu Xingyin once again realized that she would soon be entering the hall of marriage. Although she had already been married countless times. Wei Xingliang smiled as he watched his sister being helplessly dragged by the housekeeper to try on a variety of dazzling jewelry and gowns. The housekeeper turned around. Young Master Liang, you should also go to the 3rd room on the left on the 1st floor. There's a designer waiting for you. Wei Xingliang, whose smile had not yet faded, was speechless. Fortunately, he always had the same elegant appearance in front of outsiders. Okay, thank you, housekeeper. Brother, I don't want to go to school. After dinner, the two walked hand in hand in the back garden of their castle. Okay, you tell the housekeeper. He'll take care of the follow-up. Wei Xingliang agreed. It was Gu Xingyin's turn to be puzzled. You're not going to ask for the reason? Wei Xingliang smiled. Human knowledge is of no use to us. If you don't like it, of course you won't go. Why do you need a reason? Gu Xingyin was speechless. Having a brother who unconditionally pampered you and indulged you was both sweet and sad. She laughed softly. You'll spoil me. Wei Xingliang's voice was low and mellow. In the gentle night breeze, it was like the coldest wine. If I spoil you, then so be it. I'll spoil you. Who dares to say anything? Then his hand was grabbed by Gu Xingyin. Brother, feel it carefully. A turbulent power surged in his blood. Even though there were 2 layers of skin between them, Wei Xingliang could still feel the enormous power. Ying Luo. He looked at his sister with some surprise. Gu Xingyin said, I can't control this power anymore, so I don't want to go to school. You silly girl. Wei Xingliang's somewhat anxious voice reached her ears. Then Gu Xingyin felt her body being embraced in a broad embrace. It wasn't warm, but it was addictive and comforting. Don't you feel uncomfortable? Why do you care about other people's feelings? It's not a problem to wipe those people's memories. There are so many ways, but you just have to choose the one that makes you suffer the most. He scolded her with some heartache. Gu Xingyin took a deep breath of the refreshing lotus fragrance. Although she had already guessed her lover's personality, she was still very happy to hear his words for real. Feeling such a strong power in her body, his first reaction was not to suspect the source of this power, but to be concerned about whether her body was in pain. How could she let such a man belong to her, Gu Xingyin? Weishly, Weishing said. Weishing Liang snorted. Weishing Luo, have I been too gentle with you? Do you feel uncomfortable? Gu Xingyin Weishing Liang looked at his appearance and could only compromise. Okay, actually, I still feel a little uncomfortable. Weishing Liang raised an eyebrow. A little? Gu Xingyin Weishing Liang gave up. It's actually very uncomfortable. Weishing Liang was satisfied. He said in a deep voice, Weishing Luo, you have to remember that from now on, your entire body is mine. If you don't cherish your body, don't blame me for being impolite. Chapter 1061. Gu Xingyin was right. Pure-blooded nobles were powerful. Even if the vampire hunters knew about them, they wouldn't dare to provoke them. However, the low-level vampires who wandered the world at night were different. In fact, the targets of vampire hunters were often the vampires themselves. As the pure-blooded vampires, the Weishing family was like an emperor among the vampires. Naturally, they couldn't turn a blind eye to this kind of thing. Weishing Liang pondered for a moment and finally sighed. I've always sent people to keep an eye on the Vampire Hunter Association. The people who are prepared to deal with them have already been prepared. He looked at Gu Xingyin. Originally, I wanted to make a move on our wedding day as a wedding gift to you. But now, it seems that the plan will have to be brought forward. Wedding gift. Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Destroying an association as a wedding gift for his wife? Only the man in front of her could come up with such an idea. She smiled and said, There's no need. It's better to get rid of a tumor like the Vampire Hunter Association as soon as possible. Seeing that Gu Xingyin had said so, Weishing Liang didn't say anything else. He said, The Beitang family, the Fujiwara family, and the Suzumiya family have all agreed to my suggestion. When the time comes, they will also participate in this matter. Don't worry, this time, not a single fish will escape the net from the Vampire Hunter Association. Gu Xingyin, who hadn't fought for a long time, felt a little itchy. Her eyes lit up. I want to go too. Weishing Liang smiled and looked at her. Just when Gu Xingyin thought that he would agree, he smiled and said, No. Gu Xingyin. Why? Weishing Liang said naturally, You are my wife. How can I let my wife go to war? Even if the enemy was relatively weak. Weishing Liang had been taught by his parents to protect and love his younger sister since he was young. He had long had the idea that his younger sister was weak and needed to be carefully and gently protected. Even if he knew Gu Xingyin's strength and knew that she would not encounter any danger, he was not willing to let Gu Xingyin fight with others. Gu Xingyin was naturally indignant. Weishing Liang comforted her in a soft voice, comforting her, but she would never relent. Luo, be obedient. Big brother is worried about you. He looked at her helplessly. You know that nothing will happen to me. Gu Xingyin didn't know what was wrong with her. She wasn't that delicate, and she didn't really want to go. Moreover, if she really wanted to go, Weishing Liang might not be able to stop her. She was a hypocrite, enjoying Weishing Liang's helpless look. TSK. Gu Xingyin despised herself in her heart. See, this was the result of being spoiled. She felt like she was about to be spoiled. But in reality, she opened her mouth and took a bite of the fruit that Weishing Liang handed to her. Gu Xingyin sighed in satisfaction. If I'm delicate, then so be it. If I'm spoiled, then so be it. Anyway, one was willing to be beaten, and the other was willing to be beaten. Who would dare to gossip? Weishing Liang looked at his younger sister's satisfied face with a smile, his face full of undisguised tenderness. Well, now it's time to think about it. After the Vampire Hunter Association matter is over, where will the two of them go for their honeymoon? 8 nights. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1062. Wei Xingliang acted quickly. Since he had already made preparations, he left for the headquarters of the Vampire Hunter Association on the 3rd day after the agreement with Gu Xingyin. Of course, Gu Xingyin stayed in the castle. Although she couldn't go, she had a system that could report her movements at any time. Host, the two sides have already clashed. The Vampire Hunter Association is no match for them. The research institute has been uprooted. Host, your man is so handsome. Gu Xingyin. The first part was fine, but what the hell was with the last part? Wei Xingliang's trip took a long time. After the headquarters of the Vampire Hunter Association was destroyed, there were still many survivors who had escaped. These people couldn't be left alive. If you didn't get rid of the roots, they would grow again. It took almost half a month for the remnants of the vampire hunters hidden in every corner to be completely wiped out. After this matter was settled, Gu Xingyin had nothing to do with it anymore. She stretched lazily on the sofa. Recently, she had been getting lazier and lazier. The wedding of the two arrived as scheduled. The wedding of a pure-blooded aristocrat, coupled with the Weixing family's influence in this world, was so grand that it attracted everyone's attention. Of course, they didn't hold the wedding in a church, nor did they ask a priest to be their witness. A pair of vampires asking a priest to bless them. Wasn't that a joke? Although some of the guests present felt a little strange about this, they were only puzzled in their hearts. After all, it was someone else's wedding. Perhaps they wanted to do something different. Gu Xingyin got married under everyone's witness. During the day, the guests dispersed. The nightlife of the castle had just begun. Gu Xingyin and Wei Xingliang changed into more exquisite gowns. Under the witness of all the vampires, they intertwined their necks and pierced their fangs into each other's neck. This was the true mating ceremony of the vampires. Feeling the other's blood flow into their bodies, their cold hearts beat with each other's heartbeats. Gradually, the two hearts beat as one, and they could even feel each other's thoughts. Releasing his grip, the bite wound healed completely. The vampires below bowed in unison in the direction of the two of them, congratulating them. Next, it was the start of a beautiful night. The young, beautiful, and low-level vampires loved such occasions the most. Because here, they could see many adults that they would never see on a normal day. If he was lucky enough to have a good time with those big shots, and if they were happy, they would take him under their wings. That would be equivalent to reaching the heavens in a single bound. Gu Xingyin was dragged outside by Wei Xingliang to the rooftop of the castle. Gu Xingyin looked at him in confusion. Based on her understanding of this man, he definitely wouldn't waste such a beautiful night like this. What are you doing here? Soon, Wei Xingliang told her what he wanted to do. He took her hand and led her to the highest point in the city. Tonight's weather was very good, and the sky was full of stars. It is said that people who kiss under the meteor will be blessed by the stars, and will never be separated. His deep voice was like the most beautiful and mellow instrument. I, Wei Xingliang, never believed in such things, but in Luo for you, I am willing to try. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes, and a cool touch greeted her. Behind them, endless stars fell from the sky. With the stars in the sky as proof, I, Wei Xingliang, and Wei Xingyin Luo, will never be separated. Chapter 1063. System, I've estimated that I'll be able to bring it back to life in at most 10 more worlds. Gu Xingyin tilted his head and looked at the frail little kingfisher in his palm. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Whether it was the curled corners of her lips or the smile in her eyes, it was easy to see that she was very happy at this moment. Of course she was happy. She remembered that the system said that there were 2 conditions. First, she had to create a complete life. Second, she had to walk out of here with her own strength. She didn't know how long it would take to create a life and walk out of here. But one by one day, she would be able to walk out of here with her own strength, right? She felt that she was full of fighting spirit and energy. Let's go to the next world. System. Yes, host. When he opened his eyes, Gu Xingyin felt pain coming from his elbows, knees, and other parts of his body. Was he injured? She looked around and found that she was in a very simple room. Other than the bed, there were only a few stools and a wooden table with a teapot on it. No matter how she looked at it, the owner of this room lived a very poor life. However, even though the room was simple, it wasn't sloppy. It wasn't something that was unbearable. Gu Xingyin started to accept the memory transfer of this world. The owner of this body was called Chu Failwan, the princess of Tianzi country. But this princess didn't like to dress up and preferred to be armed. She wasn't interested in the luxurious life in the palace, but she liked to play with swords and spears. She was the only daughter of the emperor of Tianzi country. The emperor doted on her to the bone, and naturally didn't want her to be unhappy. The usually wise and mighty emperor was unexpectedly willful for once. He hired the best martial arts teacher for his daughter, and personally sent her to the battlefield when she was 18 years old. This was something that many people, including Chu Failwan's mother, couldn't understand. The emperor said, "My daughter is an eagle that belongs to the sky. How can I disregard her wishes and lock her in a golden cage, just because I am afraid that she will get hurt?" It was proven that Chu Failwan was born to be on the battlefield. She had a good grasp of the battle situation, and could often use strange moves to catch the enemy off guard. She had used a year's time and her military exploits to silence those people in the imperial court. She was Tianzi's goddess of war, and the emperor loved her like a treasure. He even said in front of the entire court, "This daughter of mine is a treasure bestowed to Tianzi by the heavens. If she is willing, I am willing to pass on the throne to her, and let her become Tianzi's honorable empress." He said if Chu Failwan was willing. Everyone knew that Chu Failwan didn't want to get involved in the imperial court. She only liked to fight. She enjoyed the sense of accomplishment when she arranged her troops, and led them to beat the enemy until they fled. Chu Failwan was 83 years old. She had led the soldiers of Tianzi Kingdom through hundreds of battles. There were injuries, there were life and death situations, but there had never been a single defeat. This was a legend in itself. She was also the only woman in the history of Tianzi country who was crowned as empress while she was a princess. The empress of Qinghuan had lived through 3 dynasties, and all the emperors of the 3 dynasties regarded her as the indispensable pillar of the country. She was a woman who lived a more exciting life than men. Chapter 1064. Just by looking at the plot, Gu Xingyin felt a sense of yearning for this legendary woman. Such a woman was worthy of respect no matter what era she was in. However, a small accident completely disrupted Chu Failwan's life. In a war between Tianzi country and Yunzi country, Chu Failwan, as the commander of Tianzi country, was ambushed by the enemy and accidentally fell off a cliff. Chu Failwan was the main character, and was blessed by the heavenly Tao, so falling off a cliff would not kill her. She fell at a place called Mutta village at the foot of the mountain, and was saved by a hunter. However, her head was hit and there was a blood clot in her brain, so she lost her memory temporarily. It was not a big deal. The villagers in the mountain were very simple and friendly to her, an outsider. She was supposed to recuperate in the mountain village for 2 months, then she would recover her memory in the 3rd month, say goodbye to them, and leave this place. And this experience would become an inconspicuous memory in her life. However, a person who was not supposed to be here appeared and turned this place into Chu Failwan's burial place. A girl from the modern world entered the body of a girl named Xiao. Gu Xingyin knew that this world was like a TV series to that outsider. Chu Failwan was the female lead of that TV series. That outsider died because the circuit in her house caught fire. Before she died, she was watching the TV series with Chu Failwan as the main character. That outsider did not know how she came to this world. The point was that when she came here and saw Chu Failwan, who was seriously injured and unconscious, she finally understood where she was. The outsider did not feel sad. On the contrary, she was very happy. She knew the whole story of this world, and felt that she was blessed by the heavens to be able to come to this world. Could it be that she was the female lead in a time travel novel? In the beginning, she had planned to rely on Chu Failwan. After all, Chu Failwan was a princess, so the outsider wanted to rely on Chu Failwan to leave this place. However, Although Chu Feilwan had lost her memory, she was very sensitive to people's thoughts. She didn't know what this outsider was thinking, but she could keenly sense that he didn't have any good intentions towards her. The outsider wanted to please Chu Feilwan but failed, so he started to feel resentful. In addition, Chu Feilwan was seriously injured and looked weak and pale. She actually had a vicious thought in her mind. That outsider was a surgeon in the modern world. Through some kind of luck, he obtained a medical manual left behind by the legendary ghost doctor, which recorded all kinds of strange and cruel methods. One of them was to change his face. Although it was called changing one's face, it was actually changing one's face in the way one wanted through surgery and drugs. It was a long process, and Chu Feilwan had only stayed here for 3 months. The goal of the outsiders was to make him Chu Feilwan. When Chu Feilwan was still recovering from her injuries, she secretly killed her and peeled off her face meticulously. Then, she took Chu Feilwan's body away and left the place. Chapter 1065. Chu Feilwan was originally an outsider, so when she suddenly disappeared, the people in the village would at most find it strange. It was very dangerous in the forest, so they would not take the risk to look for an outsider. Xiao was a girl, so her status in the family was not as high as her 2 younger brothers. Her parents did not like her, so they went out to look for her, but did not find her, so they left her alone. The outsider who had taken over Xiao's body found a place to hide in the forest for a period of time, and wore Chu Feilwan's human skin mask on her face. Then, she was found by the people of Tianzi country who came to look for her. That outsider pretended to lose her memory, and fooled them for a period of time. She turned herself into Chu Feilwan. In this way, Chu Feilwan was still the legendary princess, but no one knew that the real princess's body had been exposed in the wilderness, and even her soul could not rest in peace. Knock, knock, knock. Gu Xingyin's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. She came back to her senses, and saw a thin figure pushing the door open and walking in. She was just thinking about her, and here she was. Xiao was startled by the cold gaze of the woman on the bed. Gu Xingyin quickly came back to her senses, and realized that she had been affected by the plot, and could not control her emotions towards this woman. That's right, this woman was the outsider who had taken over Xiao's body. She adjusted her state of mind, and her eyes regained their usual calmness and coldness. Who are you? She asked. Xiao was a little confused and excited at the same time. When she had just transmigrated to this world, she had broken down when she saw the environment in her house, and found out that she had come to a remote mountain village. Others transmigrated to princesses, daughters of noble families and strong women, but why did she transmigrate to a poor peasant girl? But when she found out that she was called Xiao, had 2 younger brothers, and that there was a hunter named Shirley in this mountain village, her mind became active. All these were so similar to the TV series she had just watched. Especially when Xiao's mother said this morning that Big Stone had found a girl covered in blood in the mountains. This was obviously the plot of Qingluan King. Axia was pleasantly surprised. She felt that she seemed to have found a way to leave this place. That was the legendary princess. If she remembered correctly, she would be found by Tianzi's people in 2 months and leave this place. If he could win her favor and then show her his unique medical skills, it would definitely arouse her interest. If that was the case, why would he have to worry about not being able to leave this damned place? The more Axia thought about it, the more excited she became. She rushed here excitedly without even having lunch. Who would have thought that at first glance, she would be frightened by the coldness and killing intent in his eyes? As expected of someone who had been on the battlefield, Axia thought. Then, she was attracted by that person's appearance. She had watched the TV series before. The female lead, Chu Feilwan, was the most popular actress at the moment. Of course, she was beautiful. After all, Chu Feilwan, the queen of Qingluan, was the most beautiful woman in the 5 continents and 12 countries. She was beautiful enough to topple cities. However, when she saw her in person, she finally understood why she was the #1 beauty in the 5 continents and 12 countries. 4 chapters. There are still 4 chapters left. See you tonight. Chapter 1066. This woman, even if she was wearing the rough cotton clothes of a peasant woman in the mountains, because she was lying in bed. There were no hairpins in her hair, and there was no makeup on her face. She, as a woman, was stunned at first sight. How could there be such a perfect appearance in the world? Even if she was looking at her expressionlessly, she would not feel uncomfortable. Beauties always had unlimited privileges. She smiled. I heard from my mother that Brother Dashi saved a girl, so I came to see her. The Brother Dashi she mentioned was Shirley, the man who saved Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin did not have a good impression of this woman at all. So when he heard her say such words, he immediately retorted, "So you're done now? Can you leave now? I'm injured now, and the owner of this house is not at home, so I can't entertain you." She chased her away in an obvious way. Xiao's face changed. She did not expect Chu Feilwan to speak so rudely, but she still had her own purpose. She pretended that she did not understand Gu Xingyin's words, but widened her eyes and showed an envious look, saying, "Sister, you're so beautiful. I've never seen a woman more beautiful than you. I'm Xiao, a peasant in this mountain. Sister, what's your name?" Although she already knew in her heart, she still wanted to confirm if this person was really Chu Feilwan. Gu Xingyin was very cooperative. "My head is injured, so I don't remember anything in the past." When Axiu heard this, she finally set her mind at ease. Although she was very willing to stay and talk to Gu Xingyin was not very cooperative. Besides, Gu Xingyin's face was pale and bloodless. Xiao knew that if she disturbed her too much, it would make her feel disgusted, so she had to go out unhappily. Not long after she left, the owner of this house came back. At the first sight of Shirley, Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. This man's figure was very strong, and his skin was a healthy bronze color due to years of sun exposure. Now that it was spring, the thin spring shirt could not hide the powerful muscles on his arms. The man had thick eyebrows and big eyes. Although he could not be considered handsome, he had a heroic and masculine aura. He was an unyielding man. Anyone who saw this man for the first time would have such an adjective in their mind. Most importantly, Gu Xingyin sensed a familiar aura from him. However, when this tall and handsome man saw Gu Xingyin, he stuttered. You're awake?" He seemed to be at a loss. When he saw Gu Xingyin looking at him coldly, he became even more flustered. When I went out to hunt last night, I happened to see you fainted in the forest, so I carried you back." After he finished speaking, he noticed that Gu Xingyin was still looking at him without saying anything. He blushed. "Don't worry. I didn't sleep in this house last night. I also asked the neighbor, Aunt Zhang, to change your clothes for you." Okay, I know." Gu Xingyin finally spoke. "Thank you." Even if she was thanking him, she did not show any extra expression on her face. Seeing that Gu Xingyin had finally spoken, Shirley finally heaved a sigh of relief. He did not care about her indifference. It was reasonable for such a girl to be a little wary when she was brought home by a strange man. Chapter 1067. Gu Xingyin wanted to laugh when she saw him like that, but she had to hold it in. Chu Feilwan's character was cold and arrogant. She was always cold and indifferent to people she wasn't close to. She looked down and saw Shirley holding a basket in his hand. Seeing her look, Shirley remembered why he was here. He quickly took the basket in his hand. "You must be hungry after lying down for so long. This is the porridge I made. I put some mountain delicacies and wild bird meat in it. It's delicious. Have a taste," Shirley said excitedly. After a while, he realized that she did not say anything. He smiled awkwardly. Gu Xingyin looked at him and said in a low voice, "Thank you." "You're welcome." Shirley grinned. Gu Xingyin lowered her head and ate the porridge slowly. Her movements were slow and elegant. Shirley's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He never knew that there was someone who could make porridge look so good. He always felt that when this young lady held it like this, his coarse porcelain bowl seemed to have become more precious. She looked so good, and her movements were so— what was the word again? The teacher in the village taught him. Yes, her movements were so elegant. This girl must be from a big family in the big city. Shirley was confused when he remembered how she was lying there covered in blood. He did not know how she fell down the cliff. Coincidentally, the silver armor on Chu Feilwan's body fell off when she fell off the cliff. That was why no one in the village thought that she was involved in the war. After Gu Xingyin finished the porridge, Shirley took the bowl and asked her if she wanted more. Gu Xingyin shook her head. Although the porridge smelled good and she was hungry, she had not eaten for a few days. It was better not to eat too much. "May I know my savior's name?" she asked. Shirley was stunned for a moment before he realized that she was asking for his name. He sighed inwardly. This girl was different. Even her words were so elegant. He replied, "My name is Shirley, the Lay from the Three Stones. Others call me Big Stone. You can also call me Stone. Don't call me your benefactor. We mountain people don't like that." Gu Xingyin lowered her head and said, "You saved my life. Since you don't want me to call you benefactor, how about I call you Big Brother Shir?" Shirley grinned, revealing his white teeth. That works too. This lady was so polite. Could it be that her cold appearance was due to her personality? He thought for a moment and asked, "Then, how should I address you, miss?" Gu Xingyin was stunned. Then, Shirley saw the person in front of him frown, as if he was very troubled. Gu Xingyin looked at Shirley and said, "To be honest, Big Brother Shir, I don't remember anything after I woke up here. I don't even know my name." Hearing this, Shirley's heart was filled with pity. What a pitiful girl. Not only did she not know why she fell from such a high mountain, but she had also lost her memory after much difficulty. That was really. He originally wanted to say something, but when the time came, he forgot what it was. Sure enough, she was not well educated. At this moment, Shirley realized his shortcomings. He thought for a moment and said, "You can't remember your name, but you should have a name." Chapter 1068. Suddenly he thought of something and said to Gu Xingyin, "Wait a moment." Then Gu Xingyin saw him get up and bend down, seemingly taking out a small wooden box from under the bed. The wood was still very new, apparently the box had just been made. Shirley opened the box and handed it to Gu Xingyin. Inside was a milky white jade pendant, and a white jade hairpin of the same color. "These are your things. I made the decision to keep them for you. There is a word engraved on the jade pendant. See if you can remember anything." Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand and picked up the jade pendant. Shirley looked at it and felt that her pale hand was even whiter than the jade pendant. On the jade pendant, there was a word, Luan, engraved neatly. Gu Xingyin knew what this jade pendant represented. Every member of the royal family of Tianzhe country was born with a jade pendant that symbolized their status. The word engraved on the jade pendant was their name. She gently stroked the word with her hand and said softly, "I still can't remember, but there is a word Luan on it. Big Brother Shir, you can call me a Luan in the future." "A Luan, a Luan." Shirley repeated it twice and said with a smile, "This name sounds good. I'll call you a Luan." Gu Xingyin's eyes flashed with a trace of smile. In the following days, Shirley punctually brought food to Gu Xingyin at mealtime every day. He would not stay here for too long. After all, a man and a woman were alone. Shirley was also afraid that it would ruin Gu Xingyin's reputation. But a Xiu would come over to take a look when she was free. Even if Gu Xingyin had made it very obvious that she did not like to see her, a Xiu always pretended not to see her. This day, when Shirley entered the door, he happened to see a Xiu going out. The moment he entered the door, he saw the tired look on Gu Xingyin's face. He also knew that a Xiu came to his house every day. "What's wrong? Did Xiu disturb your rest?" "I'll talk to Auntie Zhou later," he said. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "Don't. I can get out of bed in the next 2 days. If you have nothing to do, go out and get some sun. It's not that she's disturbing me. It's just that Miss Xiu always likes to ask me some strange questions." Hearing the word strange, Shirley's expression changed. He hesitated for a moment and said to Gu Xingyin, "I've heard some rumors about Xiu. Logically speaking, I shouldn't say such things, but since you've encountered it, I'll give you a reminder." Gu Xingyin was very interested in this. Shirley said, "I heard from a Xiu's mother, Auntie Zhou, that a Xiu has been abnormal during this period. She used to be such a diligent girl, but now she doesn't sleep until late in the morning and doesn't get up. Auntie Zhou has to shout at her every day. When she gets up, she doesn't tidy up the house. When she eats, she dislikes this and that. He lowered his voice and said. Auntie Zhou also said that her daughter might be possessed. Gu Xingyin understood in her heart. How could she be possessed? It was obvious that she was a different person. It seemed that a Xiao did not hide her nature at all in this mountain village. Perhaps in her heart, she would have to leave this place sooner or later. There was no need to waste energy on it. Chapter 1069. Gu Xingyin's prediction was right. This body's recovery ability was very strong. After a few days she could get out of bed, but she couldn't do strenuous exercise. But at least she could help Shirley clean up the house. But to be honest, Gu Xingyin wasn't very good at these things. Shirley could clearly clean up the house in 2 or 3 moves, but if she did it herself, she would have to spend half a day. Shirley once saw this and laughed on the spot. Although I don't know what your identity is, but I think you must be a big family's young miss, so you definitely haven't done this kind of rough work before. Shirley laughed. Looking at Gu Xingyin's appearance, it was clear that she was a novice. Speaking of this, Gu Xingyin became angry. When she came to this world to draw skills, even a life skill would have been good, but what did she get in the end? Congratulations to the host for obtaining the weak and delicate sickly beauty aura. When you show a delicate and pitiful appearance, you will automatically beautify yourself and obtain a beauty bonus effect. Gu Xingyin. She thought for a long time before she finally remembered where this so-called weak and delicate beauty aura came from. But what was the use of this? She was Tianzai's goddess of war. Who would have thought that the Green Phoenix King would put on a pitiful look with a cold face? At this point, Gu Xingyin no longer had any hope for the skill draw. Back to the main topic. After confirming that she really wasn't good at cleaning up the house, Gu Xingyin turned her gaze to the kitchen. Fortunately, her cooking level was still there. The system gave her the maximum level of her cooking skill. So when Shirley came back from hunting one day and smelled the food coming out of his house, he thought that something had happened at home. Until the calm-faced Gu Xingyin came out with 2 dishes and put them on the table. I've already finished cooking, come and eat. Shirley looked at the dishes with some surprise. Whether it was the smell or the color, they were quite enticing, feeling very novel. Gu Xingyin lightly said. Today I saw that there was food in the kitchen, so I made some. The 2 of them washed their hands and started eating. When Shirley finished his bowl of rice and got up to refill his bowl, he turned around and glanced at Gu Xingyin, who was eating. Then his face turned red. For some reason, he felt that this scene really looked like a family. Gu Xingyin glanced at the person who could still giggle while eating, and did not say anything. Instead, Axiu came over right after the 2 of them finished their lunch. When she saw Gu Xingyin washing the dishes, she looked as if she had seen a ghost. How can you wash the dishes? She was the famous Qing Yuan king in the history of the Qing Yuan dynasty, a princess with golden branches and jade leaves, yet she was washing dishes in such a small mountain village. Gu Xingyin looked at her strangely. Miss Xiao's words are strange. Why can't I wash the dishes? Xiao's eyes widened. But you, how can you wash the dishes? Gu Xingyin paused and looked at Xiao indifferently. I am. Does Miss Xiao know who I am? Axiu quickly shook her head. How can I know who you are? I just think that such a beautiful woman like you washing the dishes is an insult to her hands. Gu Xingyin lowered her head and looked at her hands. It turned out that washing dishes could be insulted. Shirley had been frowning and looking at this side. Seeing this, he said to Axiu. Miss Xiao, I just heard Aunt Zhou calling you to go home. You should go back quickly, or you will be scolded later. The night watch ended. See you in the morning. Chapter 1070. Xiao's expression changed. She had been in this world for nearly a month. If she had to name one person she was afraid of, it must be Xiao's mother, Aunt Zhou. There was no other reason. Aunt Zhou's mouth was too powerful. As long as Axiu heard her name, her chubby face would immediately appear in her mind. She would have one hand on her waist, and the other pointing at you with her index finger. Her small eyes were slightly narrowed, looking at you with a bit of disdain. When she opened her mouth, it was like a string of firecrackers. You little b** tch that deserves to be hacked to death. You were born to be a ghost that wants to collect debts. This old lady worked so hard to raise you up, one mouthful at a time, one mouthful at a time, one mouthful at a time, not to let you. Thinking of this, Xiao couldn't help but shiver. It was too scary. She quickly got up and walked out. Big stone, Miss Luan, I'll go back first. Seeing her figure run away, Gu Xingyin wiped the dishes in her hands and put them away. She turned back and asked Shirley, "You lied to her?" Shirley didn't expect to be seen through at a glance. He was obviously a little embarrassed. He smiled a little embarrassedly. "I saw that she had been pestering you endlessly. I saw that you had been enduring for a long time, and didn't say anything for the sake of your face." Even Shirley could see through it. Gu Xingyin thought that she had made it very obvious. But Xiao pretended to be stupid. Especially, didn't the plot say that she was a surgeon? Gu Xingyin had been injured for so long, but she had never heard her say anything like what she should pay attention to. It was obvious that she only wanted benefits but didn't want to pay at all. Since ancient times, sincerity was exchanged for sincerity. But she had never heard of a saying that one could exchange for sincerity with one's mouth. But Shirley looked at Gu Xingyin and agreed with Xiao's words in his heart. I think there are some parts of what she said are right. People like Luan are not suitable for this kind of work. Shirley said seriously to Gu Xingyin. What's wrong? Gu Xingyin asked curiously. Shirley frowned and seemed to be thinking hard about something. When I was young, I once heard an old teacher tell a story in class. It was about an emperor who obtained a fairy-like beauty. In order to keep that beauty and make her happy, he used gold to build a palace for her. Every day, he raised her with all kinds of precious jewels, beautiful clothes, and unparalleled delicacies. Shirley looked at Gu Xingyin and blushed. I don't know how beautiful the fairy-like beauty in the story is, but I think Luan is even prettier than the fairy-like beauty in my imagination. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. It turned out that the story of keeping a mistress in a golden house also existed in this world. She was so happy because of this alternative version of the story that she did not notice that Shirley was staring at this rare beauty with a smile. Shirley felt his heart beating very fast. Even when he was fighting against the strongest wild boar in the forest, he was not this excited. When his mother was still alive, she once touched little Shirley's hair and told him the story of the cowherd and the Vega in the sky. In the story, when the cowherd saw the Vega, his heart beat very fast, as if it was going to jump out of his chest in the next moment. His mother said that the cowherd was moved by the fairy-like beauty in the sky. Chapter 1071. If the cowherd fell in love with the fairy in the sky, what about himself? If the cowherd ended up marrying the fairy in the sky, what about himself? Shirley clutched his chest and silently glanced at Gu Xingyin, who still had a smile on her face. He lowered his head sadly. Such a beautiful Alwan. It was impossible to stay in this forest, right? She would eventually return to the big city. At that time, there would also be people who would build a palace with gold for her, using countless precious jewels and beautiful clothes, just to make her smile. How could she still remember the silent and mute big rock in this desolate mountain forest? Gu Xingyin sensitively sensed that he seemed to be in low spirits. She withdrew her smile and looked at Shirley with concern. What's wrong with you? Shirley shook his head. He did not know how to hide his emotions. Even if he wanted to smile, he could not. I'm fine. He hurriedly left this sentence and turned to leave the house, as if there was a scourge behind him. Gu Xingyin looked strangely at Shirley, who suddenly became gloomy and left, and asked curiously, Did something happen that I did not notice? The system, who saw all this, also did not understand what happened and replied, I don't understand. Host, the human emotional world is the most complicated thing. Even if the most precise calculation is activated, it will not be able to analyze anything. Gu Xingyin gave up on discussing emotions with the system. For the next 2 days, Gu Xingyin felt that Shirley was avoiding her. In the past, he would sit with her for a while after dinner. Although they did not talk much, the atmosphere between them was not bad. But now, Shirley would still come back on time for dinner, but he would not take the initiative to talk. He seemed to have really become a silent rock. Gu Xingyin did not ask him about it. She asked the system, and nothing happened to him. So, was he unhappy because of her? Fortunately, on the third day, Shirley seemed to have changed back to the previous Shirley. He seemed to have figured something out. He no longer avoided Gu Xingyin's eyes, and the smile on his face increased. The system expressed that the human world was indeed too complicated. It really didn't understand. Gu Xingyin also expressed that even after being a person from so many worlds, she still couldn't understand human emotions. Another piece of good news for Gu Xingyin was that Xiao had not come for 2 days. Gu Xingyin was overjoyed when he heard the system's feedback. It turned out that it was Auntie Zhou, Xiao's mother. She insisted that her daughter must have been possessed by something strange. Otherwise, how could she explain why her obedient and hard-working daughter suddenly became a lazy and evil girl who even talked back to her mother? She specially killed a chicken and invited the most famous witch in the village, Wang Pe, to exorcise the evil spirit for Xiao. But how could there be a real witch in this world? That old lady Wang usually relied on tricking the villagers to make a living. But Axiu suffered. She was held down and beaten with a chicken feather blanket. It was called beating ghosts. Then she was closed and drank 2 big bowls of ash water, and even drank a mouthful of rooster blood. After being tormented like this, Axiu was completely obedient. No matter what she thought in her heart, at least on the surface, she finally changed back to the hardworking, obedient, well-behaved and shy Axiu. Chapter 1072. Just like that, a month passed by peacefully. Gu Xingyin could feel that her injuries were almost healed. She didn't like to go out since she stayed in the village every day. The reason was simple. This village was almost isolated from the rest of the world. No one had come here for decades. Now there was a stranger, and a beautiful girl that no one in the village had ever seen. Every time Gu Xingyin went out, the whole village would stand at the side and look at him as if they were looking at a rare object. It was really awkward. Now that she had finally recovered, there was still more than a month before the people of Tianzi country came to find her, and she recovered her memory. Gu Xingyin was thinking about how to make Shirley agree to take her out to hunt. When Shirley came back, he saw Gu Xingyin standing in the yard. He had exchanged a leopard skin for the clothes she was wearing from Auntie Zhang's house in the village. The material was light blue, and there wasn't even a pattern on it. However, Gu Xingyin just stood there quietly without any makeup on, making the winter jasmine that peeked in from the side of the fence lose its color. Alwan, what are you thinking about? Shirley now got along with Gu Xingyin much more naturally. He thought it through. Anyway, it was impossible for him and Alwan to be together. Then he would take care of her while she stayed in the village. At least, he could leave a good memory for himself. Gu Xingyin turned around and looked at Shirley. I seem to have remembered something just now. Shirley was delighted. You remembered? Gu Xingyin shook her head. Just a fragmented memory. She suddenly stretched out her hand and broke off the flower branch beside her. Then, with a shake of her wrist, she suddenly drew a beautiful sword flower. Shirley stared at her with his eyes wide open. This, if he didn't see wrong, what was that? He clearly felt a murderous aura from the seemingly weak flower branch. I think I know some martial arts. Martial arts? Shirley's eyes lit up. Men like them who lived in the mountains relied on brute force to hunt. How could they learn any martial arts? Regardless of whether it was martial arts or books, they were all extremely luxurious and rare items to them. Gu Xingyin's eyes swept over his strong body, and her eyes lit up. Why don't we compare notes? Shirley looked at her slender body and hesitated. That's not good, is it? Gu Xingyin's eyes turned cold. Are you looking down on me? Since she had already said so, what could Shirley do? He obediently put down the things in his hands and prepared to spar with her. Shirley had originally thought that he was just playing with Alwan, so he had held back a little. However, the moment he started fighting, he realized that he had completely underestimated the woman in front of him. A delicate flower branch had become an omnipotent weapon in her hands. Every time the flower branch attacked him at a very tricky angle, it was impossible for him to guard against it. Then, when he was not paying attention, It would hit him without leaving a trace. The force was not strong, but it was always enough to make him shrink back in pain. How is it? Gu Xingyin withdrew her hand and asked. The flower branch in her hand had already become a bare branch. The petals on it could not bear the force when she hit him and scattered all over the ground. Alwan is so powerful. Shirley's eyes sparkled. He was not angry at all that he had been hit so many times. Chapter 1073. Gu Xingyin slowly calmed her breathing. She had rested for such a long time, so she still couldn't get used to this sudden change. Gu Xingyin looked at him. Do you want to learn? Why wouldn't he want to? Shirley nodded repeatedly. Alwan was so weak, but she always caught him off guard. He had brute force, but it was useless against Alwan. No matter how strong you are, it's useless if you can't hit someone, right? Then I can teach you. Gu Xingyin agreed readily. In her heart, there was nothing that she couldn't share with the person in front of her. Shirley hesitated. I heard that things like martial arts, like learning, can't be taught to outsiders. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. This person was too honest. She said lightly, it's not taught to outsiders. You're not an outsider. Shirley blushed again because of her words. Alwan said that he wasn't an outsider. Did that mean that in her heart, she also stop? He forced himself to calm down. Shirley, don't think too much. That will never belong to you. If there was no hope, there would be no disappointment. To Gu Xingyin's surprise, when she proposed to go hunting with Shirley, the other party didn't object and directly nodded in agreement. She felt that it was strange. After more than a month of getting along, she was very sure that the other party cared about her very much. But if he cared about her, why did he dare to let her go hunting with him? It was such a dangerous thing. Shirley's answer was simple. I've been hunting in this forest since I was young, so I'm very familiar with it. There aren't any powerful beasts. Usually, I can handle it alone. Alwan, you're so powerful. How could anything happen to you? So he was so sure of her strength. The next day, Gu Xingyin tied a dagger to her waist and carried a bow on her back. She set off with Shirley. When the villagers saw them, especially Gu Xingyin's outfit, they were very surprised. Some people even asked on the spot. When they learned that Gu Xingyin was going out to hunt, several people laughed out loud. First, Aunt Zhou said in a particularly loud voice, hunting has always been a man's business since ancient times. Why are you a woman joining in the fun? Moreover, what can a delicate girl like you do there? When the time comes, Big Stone will have to take care of you while hunting. Tell me, what are you thinking? She didn't finish her sentence because Gu Xingyin glanced at her. When eldest Aunt Zhou was swept by that gaze, she felt as if her throat was suddenly choked by something. She could not say another word. She was clearly such a delicate girl, and she didn't have any fierce expression. With just a faint glance, eldest Aunt Zhou felt as if she had suddenly fallen into an ice cave in the cold winter. She raised her head and looked at the sun in the sky. Could it be that the sun was too bright today and she was hallucinating? Gu Xingyin finally knew why Ashio hated this eldest Aunt Zhou so much. Her mouth was really unpleasant. When Gu Xingyin saw that eldest Aunt Zhou had shut up, she nodded with satisfaction and said, I've never heard of a rule that says women can't hunt. There's also no rule that says women need men to protect them. The surrounding villagers who were watching the fun all shut their mouths. They silently watched the two people walk into the dense forest behind the mountain village. See you during the day. Good night. In addition, I'm asking for a wave of usual votes. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.